Hey guys, it's Autumn. It's another week, it's another Wednesday, so let's get down to business. How's everyone? Well, I hope you're well. I've been well. It's been a pretty good week. Just came back tonight, had a potluck sort of get together at a local LGBT center. Well, local, when I say local, is in Orlando, and I'm about an hour and a half from it, so went there with my friend Aria. We also, I took my daughter Belle, and we had a pretty good time, I gotta say. Met up some people I knew, some trans people, and that was really mostly it. It was mostly just trans people whenever I got there. And we hung out for a bit, and then we left. And then, actually, the really exciting part of that night was something I bought from a friend of mine, which is something incredibly geeky and something I'm incredibly proud to show off, and that is this giant sucker, which is a IBM Model M Mechanical Touch keyboard, circa 1984. I picked up from my dear friend Aria for 20 bucks, which is a total steal because the thing is in immaculate condition, and I could not be happy to be diving on it. It is quite amazing. It brings out the OCD in me like nothing else in this world. Just the feeling of the mechanical keys and the click-clack of the sound and whatnot. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, just YouTube anything Model IBM Model M. Just put it in there. Take a look on it. If you can get a chance, type on it. It's kind of amazing. So other than that, though, not much else has been really going on. I'm just getting everything set, of course. January 1st is when I go full-time at work. At this point, I'm just more excited to get that over with. So next 2 weeks will be interesting, and then hopefully things will be kind of less chaotic, and I can just kind of move on with my life and just move on. That's all I want. So enough of that. Let's go on and get on with this week's topic, which comes from me, actually. And I will quote myself. And I asked, how did religion or faith or non-faith play a factor in your life before transition and currently? If there was a change, did being trans play a factor into it? Well, that's an excellent question. I'm glad I asked it. Now, I know for me, there was a lot of unfortunately negative sides with the religious aspect of my upbringing. And when I say religious, I don't mean faith. I do mean separate the two for a second. I definitely believe there's two sides of personal beliefs. I think there's the religious side, which is the more institutionalized, which you would associate with church-going and religious dogma and doctrine, etc., and personal faith. As I've come to grow, I've really have always been, but especially now, have been very turned off by a sort of religious dogma and just this organized religion and in its entirety. I find personal faith, honestly, to be quite beautiful, depending on the person, of course, and quite, quite amazing, to be quite honest. Now, as a child, I grew up very religious. My parents were Southern Baptist, very sort of old-school conservative. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just framing this up so you can understand sort of where I came from. So religion was a very big factor in my life growing up. And faith, too, but, just a combination of both. And I remember, unfortunately, and this is no fault of my parents, I know they watch this, and I want you guys to know this is no fault of your own. This isn't anyone's fault, per se. This is unfortunately just the way things kind of panned out. I quite honestly, feeling these thoughts as a child, as a little girl, unfortunately having everything around me tell me that I was a boy, I thought I was going to go to hell for thinking these thoughts and having these feelings. I sincerely, honestly, truly thought that if I kept thinking these thoughts, if I didn't somehow get them out of my head, that I was going to, be cast into hell by God, that I would shame my parents and this and all of that. And I know my parents would never want me to think or feel that. And I know that's not, that may be the religious talking, but I know that's not necessarily the faith. But unfortunately, I was in a lot of fear and growing up, especially as a small child. And unfortunately, there was a large factor of religion that played into that. I wish it hadn't, but that's the simple truth of the matter, is that there's a lot of shame, and unfortunately a lot of it came from, from from that religious background. And as I've grown up, I've kind of yin-yang back and forth sometimes, dealing with my own concept of faith and religion, and where really I stand on that. And the truth of the matter is that I think it's more complicated, but it isn't, than what makes some people, it makes some people uncomfortable, because it is complicated, because I believe in God, but I believe more in God in the deist form of it. That is, if you go into the whole Enlightenment sort of era of, the great clockmaker, I do envision that if we could prove there was a God, that it wouldn't be in the sense of what we imagine one. Especially, I quite honestly reject the notion of an Old Testament God. I just can't imagine why anyone would want to worship um, God as portrayed in the Old Testament. Because there's a clear and present difference between the Old Testament God and the New Testament God. And yeah, so I just refuse, honestly. And I really don't know. I really honestly have finally come to accept the fact that I don't know if there is a God. I'd like to think there's one. I'd like to think that there's an omnipresent sort of being out there, particularly one that's looking out for our best interest. Um, does that mean that's true? No. Does it mean it's not true? It doesn't. We've yet to find any reason one way or the other that there is a God or there is not a God. And I'd like to think that there is a God, but I honestly find a certain beauty in the fact that I don't know. I think I've finally come to grips that I prefer not knowing 100%. Um, I think life would be a bit more shallow if, in my mind at least, if it seemed like everything I'm doing now is just a build-up for the next life. That it didn't really matter what I did now. I'm just putting things in order for the next life. It just seems, I don't know, it cuts the specialness out of this life. What's the point? What's the point in joy? What's the point in really living? If I think, and it may seem fatalistic, but it's not. But I think there's just this grand beauty in knowing that my next breath could be my last, and there could be nothing else after that. And I think there's something beautiful about how precious that life makes it, and how absolutely important it is for each one of us to make the best out of it. Um, that's something where I find a certain beauty and peace in, and that uncertainty, which is ironic because so many people are so terrified by that concept. But I prefer it. And then I definitely agree wholeheartedly with the teachings of Christ. I've really, there's really not much that I can really find how anyone would disagree with really the teachings of Christ. I know you can get into the whole argument of, slave morality and whatnot with some Christian principles, and obviously there's, philosophies that kind of go against that. Particularly, obviously, like objectivism, which is quite ironic, would consider that Ayn Rand's fan base is predominantly from conservative white male Christians, but that's neither here nor there. Um, I So I guess to surmise and kind of sum everything up, um, I'm faithful but not religious, and I prefer not knowing, you know, I prefer the uncertainty of that. I find peace in that, like I said. Um, and I know it's complicated, I know it's weird, but that's me, and that's how I prefer it. I find beauty in it. I find, peace in it, honestly, especially now having transitioned and whatnot, becoming more confident in myself. So I think that, I don't know, I'm just weird. Or I'm just me. I'm just human. And that's really all we are, it's just human. Um, so yeah, so Sorry, I'm kind of rambling on this one. It's kind of a hard subject. That's why I wanted to choose it for everyone. Doesn't help the fact that it's 3 in the morning. I'm kind of exhausted, but I wanted to get this video done for everyone. So, um, yeah, if you have any questions, please leave it in the lines below. I'll be happy to answer for them, especially if I'm less tired or whatnot. So, I'm going to leave it with that, and I hope you guys are doing well, and I shall talk to you all next week. Bye.